This interview went sideways fast, and the facts brought up here are clearly not the ones MAGA media wanted to focus on. Before we break it all down, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what you think about this debate. Once again, MAGA media figures tried to rewrite history on Iran policy, and once again, they ran straight into facts they couldn't actually defend. In this clip, News Nation host Leland Vinnert attempted to challenge Democratic congressman and combat veteran Seth Moulton on Donald Trump's handling of the Iran war, only for the entire conversation to turn into a brutal breakdown of how Trump's own decisions helped create the exact crisis America is now dealing with. What makes this exchange especially damaging is that Moulton didn't just argue from a partisan perspective. He argued from both military experience and historical reality. While Leland kept trying to frame Obama's Iran deal as some kind of disaster, Moulton repeatedly pointed out that the JCPOA actually achieved the core goal America supposedly wanted: intrusive nuclear inspections and preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. In fact, Trump's own administration admitted Iran was complying with the agreement before Trump tore it apart. And that's where the conversation really started exposing the contradictions inside MAGA's entire argument. Because Republicans spent years attacking Obama for allegedly giving Iran too much money under the deal, while at the same time Trump is now being accused of effectively handing Iran billions through oil sanction relief during an active conflict, all while the war itself continues driving up global oil prices and creating economic pain for ordinary Americans. The deeper issue here is that this segment wasn't just about foreign policy. It became a wider debate about competence, diplomacy, and whether Trump's approach has actually weakened Iran or simply empowered hardliners while destabilizing the global economy. And by the end of this interview, even Leland seems stuck trying to defend a strategy that still hasn't produced an actual resolution. Let's get into it.
President Trump says Iran's peace offer is like a kid's wish list for Santa. Sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, demanding reparations for war. We know how much MAGA loves the word reparations, and no guarantees on nuclear weapons. So the Iranians are playing Trump, and Americans are still paying a small fortune at the pump. But you don't watch this show to rehash cable news talking points about whose problem it is or who caused the problem. There's got to be some kind of solution put forth. President Trump's put forth the solution of strangling the Iranians economically for the next couple of months. At the beginning of this conflict, a vast majority of Americans said it was important not only to end Iran's nuclear program, but also disrupt their ability to support terrorism. Important goals. Democrats don't much like Trump's solutions, but have offered little of their own. Congressman Seth Moulton is with us now. If we look forward rather than back, Congressman, because America is at the place we are, and America is better when America is respected and feared abroad, what would you do to ensure that Iran stops supporting terrorism, gives up nuclear weapons, and lastly, reopens the Strait of Hormuz?
I mean, one of the most important lessons we've learned from these misbegotten wars in the Middle East, Leland, is that you have to have a plan to win the peace. Not just win the war, but win the peace. Sadly, Trump is not only losing the war, but he's losing the peace negotiations as well. And I'm going to say something shocking here. I agree with Bill O'Reilly when he just said what we need. We need a deal for intrusive nuclear inspections, and we need to reopen the strait. Remarkably, that is exactly what President Obama handed Trump on his first inauguration. It's exactly what he handed him. He had intrusive inspections,
and he handed the Iranians enough money.
And the strait was open.
He handed the Iranians enough money to wildly increase terrorist activity around the Middle East, kill hundreds, if not thousands, of Israelis on October 7th.
Okay, but where are we today?
He handed them everything.
Where are we today? I'm just saying, like, look, I'm trying to find common ground.
You're saying Obama was the great statesman after handing the Iranians billions of dollars?
Excuse me?
You're saying we should be more like Obama, who gave the Iranians billions of dollars?
Wait. Oh, so Trump, when he amazingly lifted oil sanctions on the Iranians in the middle of the war, like, hey, thanks for killing 14 Americans, we're going to lift oil sanctions on you. That alone gave them $15 to $16 billion. Right now, I mean, you can buy a lot of ballistic missiles from the Chinese for $16 billion that we just handed Iran in the course of this war.
Okay,
so don't talk about Obama actually got something for that money. Whether you like the price or not, Leland. Hold on. Whether you like the price or not, Obama got something for that money. He got intrusive inspections. He got a deal that prevented Iran from ever having a nuclear weapon.
Okay.
And Trump's first administration certified they were following the deal.
Let's try to get into this decade of where we're at right now. Democrats don't like anything Trump's done. They didn't like his negotiations with Iran. They don't like the war with Iran. They don't like how he's treating the Israelis. What do you do right now to restore American deterrence and to reopen the strait? And if it is not, continuing to strangle Iran economically and potentially use military force against them?
The only two options here at the end of the day, the only two options are to actually take over Iran to reopen the strait. We're talking Iraq war again. Iran is twice the population of Iraq, so maybe 300,000 troops, since we all agree the 100,000 we sent to Iraq wasn't initially enough, because that would actually eliminate their nuclear weapons program, actually change their regime into a more peaceful regime, a Western-oriented regime, and actually reopen the strait. But if you're not willing to do that, then at the end of the day, you've got to negotiate with the Iranians. So here's a first step. How about send some professionals to negotiate instead of real estate tycoon Steve Witkoff? Where is the Secretary of State? I mean, I would be embarrassed right now if I was Marco Rubio. There's a geopolitical crisis. It's causing major domestic problems with rising gas prices. And Marco Rubio's been sent to babysit Cuba? I mean, what is going on with
seems
this
to be the most popular
negotiations?
member of the administration right now.
You're
going to trash
what
Rubio
I'm asking
now?
is, where are the professionals to actually negotiate a decent deal? You've got people who've negotiated with Iran for decades in the State Department. Why are they being sidelined?
I don't think I think the reason there's new people is because the people in the State Department who are negotiating with Iran seem to be apologists for Iran. So,
no, absolutely not apologists for Iran, because they actually got a deal that prevented them from having a nuclear weapon. And the bottom line is that the one
I get
big
the Democrats
achievement—
now seem to want to go. They seem to say that Obama was this panacea to the Middle East. I was there.
Look, look,
I was there
critical
with Obama in the Middle East, and it turned into a complete disaster. The Arab Spring.
Okay, well, first of all,
didn't really work out.
Listen, Leland, don't forget that I've been on the ground in Iraq. I've seen Americans killed by Iranians.
Yep.
So don't question my concern about the national security threat that Iran poses. I just actually want to see us win. I want to actually see Iran be prevented from having a nuclear weapon. And what I would really like to see is actual regime change in Iran from within. And when you have a diplomatic deal that you then build on with more diplomatic deals to strengthen it, to make it better rather than tearing it up and starting a war, you actually empower the moderates in the country rather than the hardliners. Everything Trump has done is empowered the hardliners.
Okay, well, I think that's one method. I don't buy that it's going to work, but I understand the point.
Well, it'd be a lot better than right now, because we've literally gotten nothing out of them. For all of Trump's bluster and bombs, he's gotten nothing out of the Iranians except they've closed the strait, which they've never closed before.
They're phenomenally weakened. They're nearly broke. We have
how are they? They're so weakened that they keep attacking the U.S.
They're 2 to 4 months away from economic collapse. And
well, first of all,
that's the report Democrats love talking about. So, look, there's two ways to get to the point. You're arguing one way. From having been in the Middle East,
if you think Trump is actually going to hold out 4 months, I mean, you give him more credit than I do.
Well, we'll see. That is the $1 trillion question.
It is a $1 trillion question. No, you're right. It is a $1 trillion question. We'll see.
Congressman, thank you. We will. We'll talk to you soon.
Always good to see you, Leland.
Yeah.
There's a reason why MAGA media personalities get so defensive anytime somebody brings up Barack Obama and the Iran nuclear deal. And it's because deep down, they know the comparison is politically devastating for Donald Trump. They know it, because the more people actually look into what the JCPOA was, what it accomplished, and what happened after Trump tore it up, the harder it becomes to defend the mess we're watching unfold right now. And Seth Moulton absolutely dismantled that entire MAGA narrative during this interview. Notice what kept happening throughout the exchange. Every single time Leland Vittert tried to pivot into generic conservative talking points about Obama giving Iran money, Moulton dragged the conversation back to the core issue. Did the deal work or not? And the uncomfortable reality for MAGA is, yes, it did work. That's not Democratic spin. That's not liberal media bias. That's not revisionist history. Trump's own administration certified that Iran was complying with the agreement. That's the part Republicans never want to sit with, because it destroys the mythology they've spent years building around Trump supposedly being tougher, smarter, or more effective on Iran than Obama was. The reality is Obama achieved through diplomacy what Trump still hasn't achieved through escalation, sanctions, threats, and military confrontation. In intrusive inspections, restrictions on uranium enrichment, international oversight, containment without war. That was the actual outcome of the JCPOA. And what did Trump do? He tore it up almost entirely out of political ego because he could not stand the fact that Obama had a major international agreement attached to his legacy. That's the truth people need to start being honest about. Trump didn't enter office with some superior replacement plan. He didn't build a stronger framework afterward. He simply destroyed the existing deal because Obama's name was attached to it.
And now the world is paying the price for that decision. Oil prices rising, global instability, risk of wider regional war, economic pressure spreading across multiple countries, shipping disruptions, gas prices surging, all while MAGA figures are still trying to pretend this is somehow a sign of strength. And honestly, one of the most revealing moments in this entire segment was when Seth Moulton pointed out the hypocrisy surrounding sanctions relief. Republicans spent years screaming that Obama supposedly funded terrorism by releasing Iranian assets as part of a negotiated agreement that included nuclear restrictions and inspections. Yet now Trump is being accused of effectively allowing Iran to gain billions through oil sanction relief during an active military conflict. And suddenly MAGA wants everybody to stay quiet about it? That hypocrisy is impossible to ignore. Because if Barack Obama had done what Trump is doing right now, Republicans would have absolutely lost their minds. Fox News would be running nonstop coverage calling it treason. MAGA influencers would be demanding impeachment hearings every single day. Conservative politicians would be claiming Obama was financing America's enemies. But because it's Trump, the exact same people suddenly become incredibly nuanced about geopolitics. And that's why this issue exposes something much bigger than just foreign policy. It exposes the complete intellectual dishonesty inside modern MAGA politics. These people do not operate from consistent principles. They operate from loyalty to Donald Trump first, and then reverse engineer every argument afterward to justify whatever he's doing in that particular moment. That's why Leland Vitter kept struggling throughout this interview, because at no point could he actually explain what Trump's endgame is. That's the key issue. What is the strategy? What is the actual path toward long-term stability? What is the realistic outcome here besides endless escalation and economic pain?
Because Moulton laid it out very clearly. If America is unwilling to fully invade and occupy Iran, which would make Iraq look small by comparison, then eventually you are going to have to negotiate. That's reality. Iran is not some tiny isolated state that simply collapses overnight because Trump posts threats on Truth Social. It's a major regional power with enormous geopolitical influence, massive energy leverage, and strategic alliances. And the more chaotic this conflict becomes, the more global instability increases. That's why Moulton's point about empowering hardliners was so important. Trump supporters love pretending they're somehow weakening the Iranian regime. But in reality, aggressive external attacks historically strengthen authoritarian hardliners because populations rally around national defense during foreign pressure. That's exactly what appears to be happening now. Before all of this escalation, there were growing frustrations internally within Iran against the regime. But when bombs start dropping and foreign powers escalate militarily, internal dissent often gets replaced by nationalism and survival instincts. Suddenly, the regime can present itself as the defender of the nation against outside aggression. So, ironically, Trump may have strengthened the exact people he claimed he wanted to weaken. And that's the story of so much of Trump's foreign policy in general. Massive rhetoric, short-term theatrics, but very little strategic long-term thinking underneath it all. Because look at where we are now. The nuclear deal is gone, Iran is more hostile, the region is more unstable, oil markets are under pressure, global economic anxiety is rising, American consumers are paying more, and there's still no clear resolution in sight. So what exactly was accomplished? That's the question MAGA never answers. And another thing people should pay attention to is how often Republicans now rely on emotional slogans instead of measurable outcomes. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon is not a strategy by itself. Almost everybody agrees with that objective. Democrats agree with that objective too. The disagreement is about method.
Obama's approach was diplomacy backed by verification. Trump's approach has been confrontation backed by instability. And right now, objectively speaking, Trump's approach has produced more chaos, more economic fallout, and fewer concrete results. That's just reality. And honestly, I think the reason this frustrates so many people is because it feels like the world is once again being dragged into crisis because of Donald Trump's inability to separate governing from personal ego. He inherited a functioning agreement, tore it apart for political branding purposes, and now everybody else has to deal with the consequences of the vacuum that created. That's not strength, that's recklessness. And the saddest part is that ordinary people always end up paying the price for these decisions. Americans paying higher gas prices, families dealing with inflation, workers struggling with rising costs, entire economies feeling the effects of geopolitical instability. Meanwhile, the political elites who push these confrontations rarely suffer any consequences personally. So when Seth Moulton says he actually wants America to win and not just posture, that distinction matters, because real foreign policy is not about cable news bravado or who sounds tougher on television. It's about outcomes. It's about stability. It's about preventing catastrophe before it happens. And whether MAGA wants to admit it or not, the Obama nuclear deal achieved more actual stability than what Trump has delivered since destroying it. That's the truth at the center of this entire debate.